Okay, so we're ready to start taping. The board is all up. We've done some pre-fill around the place because you'll remember I told you we've left some of the plaster up. Some of the old plastered walls are existing, and we're tying into the new ones. And there was old round cove in the ceiling, so we've taken that off, so we have to patch. So there's a bit of patching that we had to do. So we've done some pre-fill. We're ready to start taping. I just thought I'd go over some of the basic things. If you're doing a lot of taping, you may want to, buy some tools. I don't suggest buying, the great big fancy tools. You don't need those things around. Just with the basics, you can get a lot of work done. Even putting on tape, there's a few different ways to do it. You can get tubes. You can get little bazookas that have all the tape comes out pre-done, ready to go. That's if you're doing a lot of production stuff. If you're just doing home renovation and maybe an addition on your house or finishing your basement or something, you don't need to go that elaborate. I've got this little blue box. It just looks like a recycling container. It just kind of funnels down. You just put the tape through and then just set the door at the front here, and then just pull the tapes out, and it'll put a little bit of tape on the back there, and you just pull out what you need. I use a box, from the mud, or just even a bucket, a pail, and just pull a bunch of it out there. And then you could just take that around with you and use that to pull it out, put the tape on, cut it off, and carry on. So that's what we'll do if we're doing bigger things like this. Sometimes you're just using smaller things, just this little tape on my belt. You just go along and you got your mud and your trowel. Let me just grab my little mud box here, and I'll just give you a little demonstration. I won't do the whole thing, just kind of a demonstration. But you just go along and just put your mud on the wall or on your seam where you're going to be going. And then just pull the tape out, put it on top. And then just level that off. You just want to make sure the tape or the mud is in behind the tape, so the whole thing is covered. You don't need a huge amount. Like, you don't want to have a ½ inch or a ¼ inch of mud in behind there. Just enough to keep the tape flat or wet in behind there. You want to make sure all the edges are completely covered as well. And really all you're after at this stage is just to make sure it's inside that bevel. If you put your tape across there, you can see that it's just filled that beveled edge, the tapered edge on the drywall. And that's really all you want for your first tape. So if you're not doing a lot of big projects or a huge thing, then just having something like this is perfectly fine. The other thing you can do is just go along and just kind of pull everything out, put the tape up or the mud up in your corners, and just level it out. And in terms of tools, other than having a couple of mud boxes like that, a little angled 3-inch are really nice because it's easy to get down into the corners. Well, I'll show you how I do my corners. But just getting into the corners just with the angled one is really nice because then you're not digging in too much. And then, just a 6-inch, and then a, 8, 10, 12-inch, and you want to have a couple wider ones just for tapering things out, feathering things out. And that's really all you need for basics. Okay, so I thought we'd go into, this corner, again, just to kind of go over the basics, because we've got, this corner is great. We've got a new wall that we put in here for the bedroom, so we've got new drywall going on there, so we can show you just taping and finishing that. We've got the existing bathroom wall, which I specifically left just so that we could go over it and just show you how to fix that, because this is one of these things that you'll probably run into if you're doing a home renovation. If you're doing a bathroom renovation in a home that's 40, 50, or 60 years old or older, chances are it's got some tile that's just kind of glued on with this gross yellow golden colored glue that's on there, and it's hard to get off. And You can grind and you can chip, you can do all kinds of stuff, but typically all I do is just go around and just get any of the loose stuff off, just going over the whole area, just getting all the loose stuff off. And then from there, it's just skim coating over top. And in skim coating, it doesn't take a lot of work. It's just a little bit of time, because you're going to put a little bit on at a time. It's best to put a little bit less on and then just build up, coats, rather than trying to put too much on at one time. Then you're either grinding it down or it's cracking. It's doing all kinds of crazy things on you. So just to put a thin layer on it is the best way to go. So like I said, if you're doing any kind of home renovation, you're going to come up with, stuff like this, where you take out an old cabinet. There's perhaps some wallpaper behind there that's from the last job or a previous experiment, and you want to make sure you get the paper off. You don't want to try to drywall or put compound over top of the paper, because it's just, once the moisture gets into the paper, it's just going to lift and it'll just be a disaster, and it'll continue to be a disaster. So you need to remove any wallpaper that you may find on behind cabinets or behind baseboard, anything at all. Just get all of it off. Not even the top, not just the top layer, but the bottom layer. Get some of that glue off as well, because oftentimes if you strip wallpaper off a wall, if you leave the glue on the wall, that when you go over it, even skim coating it with mud or painting, it's always going to bleed through. There's always going to be some shine from the glue. So you've got to make sure you wash it down, get the stuff off. And then with this stuff here, where it comes to just the old glue from tile, all I do is just skim coat over top of it, and it's just a matter of just laying out the mud. And at this point, it's just kind of an on and off thing. You just want to get it in there. You're not going to make it pretty. You're not going to make it even. All you're doing is just getting into those little grooves, the little notches from the glue, and getting those filled. So you can see I'm putting it on, but I'm taking most of it right back off again. I'm not leaving a ton on there. I'll go a little bit heavier in here. That's where the old toilet paper was, so we did a little bit of pre-fill in there. And that's really all you're going to do for your first coat, is just go over and just get the mud in those little voids in behind. And you don't want to keep too much mud in your tray, only because you're going to be taking, this stuff is going to keep coming off as you go up. So you're going to get little bits and pieces that get into that. So you just want to keep a little bit of mud in your tray as you're going. That way you can use most of that, in putting in that first coat. And that's really all you want to do on your first coat, is just go over those rough areas, where there's some shelving, some holes, that kind of stuff. Any of the old glue, just get on there. You can also take your sanding pole and just go over it with an aggressive sandpaper and just give it a light sand. That'll help get rid of some of the stuff as well. If you do it that way, you want to make sure you dust it off so you don't have a lot of the junk and the dust in behind there. And then just do the exact same process, just going over top of it. So this is a really interesting wall, because this was the window that went outside in the bathroom. So we've taken it out, because this is going to become kitchen. And so the fridge and there'll be pantry cabinets on either side of this. So we've eliminated the window to take it out. And so we'll just tape around him as well. But that's all I'm going to do. I'll just continue to do a little bit of the fill on this wall, just to show you what we would do. And then as we keep adding layers, we'll show more of it until it's done. Because when I come back to do the second one, a lot of these little ridges and little lines and stuff that are in there now, those will get filled in, and then we'll give it a light little sand, just get rid of some of the high areas, and then we'll give it a third one, and it might need a fourth one just to level and smooth that out. And then once it's done, it's done. So you do have options when it comes to, you know, lath and plaster, working with old lath and plaster, you know, taking it all off, or if you don't want to take it off because you're conscious of, you know, filling the landfill with extra material, you can, you know, you do have the option of leaving some of it off, just exposing what you need, which is what we did here in this kitchen. And I did it specifically just for this illustration so you could see what is possible, what you can do. And so we just troughed out areas, we opened up areas where we wanted to run the new wires and new plumbing and so on. And that's all we did. And then we've just left the existing plaster on there. So again, we're not filling the landfill with lots of stuff. So if you're really conscious of that then, you know, this is going to be a great video for you because you'll see how you can patch things up. That's why we left this wall in here. We just filled in the window. We left the wall. We stripped off all the old tiles. We stripped off all the stuff in here. And then just to show you that it's a process, but you can fill things back in, you can fix it up, repair it, and make it as good as new. And the truth is, you know, 90% of this wall is going to be covered. We got 2 pantry cabinets and a fridge going in here, so most of this wall is never going to be seen. So, you know, even if it's not 100%, it'll be really close, and it's going to be covered anyways. Okay, so I'll carry on, just kind of filling up this area. I even show you some of the tape here as we're going, because I got to go around this window. So when it comes to using this tape, again, just pull out what you need, stretch it down, grab your little knife, and just cut him off where you need it. When you're doing your tapes, it's a good idea to, you know, cut them off as square as you can, and then just butt them up to there. Don't overlap them, because what happens is you get such a buildup. You know, if we had 2 layers of paper in there, then, you know, that's out a little bit higher. So it's got the potential of, when you sand it, there's the potential of sanding down and exposing the paper again. So it's always good to, you know, keep things as square as you can, and just be conscious of your overlaps when you're butting up tape to, you know, inside corners, the flat line, the flats, and so on, to just bring them back and just cut them flush. And then when you're flattening out the tape, don't go too heavy, too hard on the, you know, your first pass. You want to just kind of get the tape straightened out and laying flat. Then you can give it a little bit of extra pressure to get the excess tape, or mud, sorry, from behind the tape, like so. That way it stays nice and flat. Again, it just makes it easier when you go to put your next coat over top of your second coat and your final coat. It just makes it easier to cover. If you push down too hard, you got the potential of, let's see if I can just over exaggerate it here. You get the potential of this happening. You get some lines going on in there and creases. And then if you just leave it like that, then you got to build that up even higher to get rid of it. So that is the kind of thing that can happen if you try to push the tape down too hard, too fast. So just giving it a little bit of weight and flattening it out, and then once it's down nice and flat, then you can go back and level it out. So again, this is just a good example of old and new. See, like that. See how I push that over a little bit just to show you. Like if you go too hard, that's exactly what happens. You can you get those lines in there. So you want to make sure that they're out and have it as flat as you can possibly get it. Just makes it easier to finish. All right, and that's it for the first coat. We'll just that's it for the first coat around that. We'll just let that go. And so it's bridged up pretty reasonable. What we did underneath here was, this was easy enough because we were able to frame this out and keep it close to the front so that the 1/2 inch, butt up relatively close. Some of the other areas where, again, behind the kitchen sink, where the kitchen sink is going to be, the old lath and plaster was probably almost 7/8 of an inch to an inch thick, and we're using 1/2 inch drywall. So we just furred it out with strips of plywood just to get it out to that level so that the 1/2 inch. So you just have to play around with your heights and you can blend them in really well, and then carry on from there. And then when attacking a wall like this, I typically wouldn't have done the flat first. I did it just for an experiment, just to show you how you could do it with a hand tool. But typically I would do the corners first and have those again so that you're doing the same thing I told you here, is just bring your tape up to that corner and tear it off so that you don't get that overlap. You get those high corners, you heavy corners in there. So if you did your you did your corners first, then do your flats, it makes it a lot easier to just cut the tape off so that you don't overlap too much. And then here's a good example here as well. This, again, coming up into the existing wall, there was a wall here before, so there was a big void here. We just kind of filled in with drywall, and when we carved it, because the wall was kind of out of whack on the side, this gap got a little bit bigger. So typically I would pre-fill that with some sheetrock 45, but sometimes what we'll do is I'll just put mud in there and then just put mesh tape and then put the paper tape over top of that, and that'll hold it in place. So we'll pick up on that a little bit later once I get things set up. Okay, so one of the best ways to do some pre-filling is go around with some sheetrock 45, which dries up quickly. You can go around and just hit any of the wide spots, any of the areas that are, maybe a 1/4 inch or so wide, or that maybe got broken, maybe something happened as you were installing the drywall. Go around and just pre-fill it with some 45. If you get to a spot where you find one that you missed, a simple way to do it is just to take some mud. Let me grab my 6 inch here. Just take a little bit of mud and put it up in that corner so that it's full, like so. So that's similar to what you would do if you were pre-filling, right? Because that's a little bit wider there. So that's pre-filled. Then just take your mesh tape and push mesh tape into the corner, just in that area. You don't need the whole thing, just in the area that was a little bit wide. Just get it in there. Now I got everything all messy. Let me just tear him off. So now you got some mesh tape in there, and what that'll do is the mesh will hold everything in place for you. Some dust or something on that, it just doesn't want to stay. So once that's done, then I can just grab some of my tape that I've already got in my box here, and I'll just bring it out. And then just push the tape right over top of that. And then you can just level that out. Again, just pushing it down a little bit at a time. You don't want to press in there too hard, too fast, because then it'll just get all creased and wrinkled, and it'll just be awkward to cover. And it's good to push down into the corners so you're not collecting any of the junk that's down there. Again, the nice thing about having this angle is when you're in there, you're just kind of on a bit of an angle, so you're not digging into the corners, and so you're not affecting it too much, and you're able to actually take the mud that's right in the corner rather than just pushing it around to the other side. You can remove it, so it keeps the corner nice and clean and makes it easier to finish. And there you have it. And then you can do the same thing on a flat. Like this is that drywall that we put in here to cover that void, and this is our new material, or the old material. And so we can do the same thing there. Just pre-fill that. With a little bit of mud. And then I'd put mesh over top of that. Just over that area, and that will hold it in, and then I can grab my tape and carry on. And that's it. So we'll let that dry. We'll carry on the rest of the place, do the rest of the angles and so on. And that'll be it for first coat. Then we'll go over second coat. We'll start talking about that a little bit more. So yeah, it's important to do some pre-fill. If you've got some broken corners, broken edges, stuff that's a little bit too wide, sometimes it gets miscalculated. Sometimes walls aren't 100% and they get up there. So doing the pre-fill, using some mesh tape will hold the mud in place as you put the paper tape over top. It's a great way, you know, if the void isn't too big, to help you keep moving along. And then do your corners, cut things off with the edge of your knife as much as possible, and then, you know, then go along and do your flats and just butt up to it. And then remember, just not to go too heavy at one time, because it's not a race to get it done. You want it done right, so just putting it in layers at a time is better. It's sometimes better to do a fourth coat if you have to, rather than doing 2 thick coats to try to speed up the process. So we're going to carry on filling up the rest of these, doing the rest of these angles, do our flats, get those ready to go, and then we'll catch up with you when we start doing the second coat, just to show you what we do on that one and how we're going to continue to skim out this to build these areas up as well.